Hello, my quilty friends. It's Stacy of Stacy Creates Stuff, and we are back for our next week of the Haven Quilt Along. This week we are still working on border components. It's the last week of that, and we are working on a slightly more intensive unit than we did last week. Last week was 9 patches, super simple. This week is flying geese. Also, not a very hard block or unit to make, and we are making quite a number of them, both for the border, and there are also a few flying geese in the quilt. If you've never made a flying geese unit before, have no fear. I'm going to walk you through step by step in this video, but I also have another video that goes a little bit more in depth if you want a few more tips and tricks. Check it out up here. And I will link that in the description below. We are going to be making 6 different colorways of flying geese for the border. For each of those colorways, you will be making 8 units. Much like last week where I was using the squares from the 9 patches to use them as leaders and enders for when I am chain piecing the other components and the other blocks for this quilt, I will also probably be doing that with the flying geese as well. But if you are anxious to get going, there is nothing stopping you from making all of the flying geese right now. Let's get started on our flying geese. So I have grabbed the first bag of flying geese. There are a total of 6 different colorways of flying geese. They're all constructed the same way. You have a rectangle, and you will need 2 of the squares to make 1 flying geese unit. So for flying geese number 1, we'll be making a total of 8 of this colorway. Now I have a couple of tools that I like to use to facilitate making these. One is the sandpaper board. So you put a single layer of fabric on that, and it aids in marking your square. And I'm just going to mark a diagonal from corner to corner. I'm using my quick quilter's rule. You can use a regular ruler as well. That works. And again, I'm going from corner to corner. I am using my white clover marking pen. Now, when you first make the mark, it doesn't seem to appear. You just need to give it a few moments for the whatever medium that it's holding the white chalk in to disappear. So you can start to see it coming into play now. And of course, depending on the color of your fabric, white might not be the right color. But it is working for this dark green. So I would go through and mark all of these. Now, this particular marking pen is heat erasable. So with a little heat, so when I go to press these, that'll just disappear. And I'm marking on the wrong side of the fabric anyway, so it's not going to be seen. All right, so that one's still coming into play. You can start to see this line, hopefully, a little bit better. And now I'm just going to align the square on one end of the rectangle. And when I take it to my machine, I am going to sew on this line. And then this will fold back. I'll press that in place and I'll trim away the excess. When I go to sew, because this is the piece that's staying, I'm actually going to sew just a little bit towards the section of the square that's going to get cut away. And that just allows a little bit of extra so that the fabric can roll over the stitching line. If you sewed right on the line, you might just come up a tiny, tiny bit short. Not short enough that you would need to redo it, but I just like to sew just on the one side. Now, once I have that sewn in place, I'm going to take my other square and line that back up. Of course, at this time, this will be here and cut away. And then I will sew along here. You want to make sure that your 2 sewing lines come to a point, because if you do your second one in this direction, when you go to press it, you will not get a flying geese. So do make sure that your sewing lines are meeting towards a point. All right, let's go sew the first line. All right, I have sewn the first square on. I did press it towards the big goose there, and then I am ready to place my second one. So again, lining that up with both sides and one end of the rectangle, and making sure that my sewing line is coming to a point. Then I'm going to go ahead and sew. And I like to start from the side, regardless of whether it's the first square I'm sewing on or the second, and then sewing towards the point. I just find that that is a little easier, and you tend not to kind of get that crinkle that sometimes can happen if you start at the very point. So it's a little more fabric here for the feed dogs to grab onto, and it makes it a little bit easier. And again, I want to make sure that, because this is the part that's getting cut away, that I am sewing just to the side into that section rather than right on the line. And here we have our finished Flying Geese 1. So I have 7 more to make of those. I'm going to go ahead and put those on a design board to stack up. And I'm going to show you what each of the other 5 Flying Geese look like. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about the pieces that are going to be cut off. I go ahead and actually sew a second line a little less than 1/2 inch away, but enough so that I have seam allowance on both sides. And these are going to become half square triangles. Now, they won't be used in the quilt top, but I have a little bonus project in mind, because we'll have this not only from the 6 Flying Geese types that we're making, but there are also a couple of blocks that have some Flying Geese trims that we'll be able to put into just a fun little project. All right, let's set up the design board. And for these, I'm just going to keep them this way rather than lay them out how they're going to be, because I know that the squares go on the rectangle. That makes it easy. All right, and here's a look at all the other Flying Geese combinations. Flying Geese number 2, Flying Geese number 3, Flying Geese number 4, Flying Geese number 5, and Flying Geese number 6. So I'm just going to be making these in between making the other blocks for this quilt. And all of these Flying Geese are for the border, so we don't need them until almost the end anyway. Of course, you can make them right now if you wish. It is completely up to you. And here are the fabrics that you'll use for the painted desert and what those finished Flying Geese will look like. All right, my friends, we have finished up 2 weeks now, all of border units. But next week, we are diving into block number 1. So I hope this was a good warm-up for getting your sewing mojo on. And until I see you next week, why not check out this?